Thank the gentleman. To say that Joe Biden is not the reason that supply is limited, it just doesn't match with the facts. Again, just 2 days ago, Joe Biden, not Putin, not the big oil companies, Joe Biden canceled oil and lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico. Joe Biden canceled lease sales in Alaska. Joe Biden as a candidate. This isn't just some new development for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a candidate for president of the United States, said, and I quote, "No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period, ends." That was Joe Biden as a candidate, and he didn't stop there. When he became president, day one, he started an attack on American energy. It's crystal clear why. Now, glad the gentleman is bragging about high production levels, but let's not think for a minute that Joe Biden's the reason that we have production today, because if you understand the oil and gas industry, I was just on a rig in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico 2 weeks ago, one of the largest producing rigs in the Gulf. Do you know that rig got its first lease in 2002, and it took about 10 years to get the first oil? Now, they put private money, all private money, over $10 billion of private money into developing those leases, and there were many leases and permits along the way to finally get to the point where they could actually bring oil out of the ground, making money to pay back the $10+ billion, but to ultimately get to a point where they could produce over 130,000 barrels today. If Joe Biden wants to try to dare take credit for that 130,000 barrels today, he needs to go check the record at how long it took to get that oil from lease, permits, out of the ground to ultimately getting it into world markets, not American markets. Oil companies don't set the price of oil, it's world markets. But that oil ultimately depletes, which is why the oil companies are always looking for new opportunities. Gentleman talks, as the White House has talked about, thousands of permits that are out there. Sounds really good. Understandably, I think people recognize it's a misleading number because many of those permits are for wells that were tried where there's no oil. Not everywhere is oil. And so you buy leases to go explore. It's called exploration for a reason. If it was known reserves, if you go drill right under a gas tank, you'll find oil. But if you want to find oil out amongst the natural resources that leases are issued for, you do test wells, you do seismic engineering. By the way, that takes years to ultimately go through the process of permitting. Since Joe Biden's been president, they've not issued new leases for seismic. So you might have a 3-mile by 3-mile lease in the Gulf of Mexico that you paid millions of dollars to the federal government 4 years ago, and you're continuing to try to explore that 3 miles by 3 miles that the federal government was happy to take the money for, but you can't even get a permit from the federal government today to explore that lease. To exercise other permits, you had to get permits for the pipelines. Not a single new pipeline permit has been issued. So even if you get it out of the ground, the Biden administration doesn't want you to have the ability to move it through to refineries, to world markets. So what you see is a recognition by the rest of the world that America's taken itself off the shelf in terms of the ability to produce energy. Again, Joe Biden is the one who canceled all these sales. Joe Biden is the one as a candidate who said there will be no drilling. And so cartels love this policy because they know now they control the supply. America is producing oil today based on permits and actions that were taken years ago. But what we're seeing today is an inability to continue developing those leases, which means ultimately they will dry up, as all of those leases do. But that's why you're always exploring for the next round of finds. Those next rounds of finds aren't being explored for in America. They are being explored for in other countries, but it's countries that are cartels, countries that are monopolies, so they can control the price. Interesting, the gentleman brought up the last time we saw these kind of prices was in the 70s under a similar Democrat president who had the same kind of attitude towards American energy, and so it made our country dependent on foreign energy. It created lines at the pump where people had to wait days to get gasoline. When you saw President Trump opening up American energy and allowing a free market to produce energy, we don't put those constraints in place when we're operating under a free market, so the cartels have no leverage. Putin has no leverage. The only reason he has leverage is if you have a president like Joe Biden who says we're not going to produce in America. He said it. He took the actions to follow up on it, including just a few days ago amidst high gas prices, he actually took more American energy off the market, giving the cartels more monopoly power to raise prices. So I wish we would address that. We have a bill to address that and reverse those bad policies. Unfortunately, I haven't heard the gentleman commit to bring those to the floor yet, but I would yield back.